Heyo YouTube, Flowcat here, and today I wanted to talk about something that I think is wrong with games and gaming in general. I hope this discussion is interesting or entertaining for you, but yeah, with no further ado, let's jump into it. So to start out, I wanted to discuss a little bit of my gaming history. I've played many games in my lifetime, but there are some games that have stuck out to me more than others. And now for a long time, I didn't really understand why these games stuck out to me more or what made them more special to me. But since I've gotten older, I think I've had the opportunity to think about this stuff a lot. And since then, I have come to the conclusion that games that stuck with me are games that made me feel particularly immersed in the world, the setting, or whatever that the game takes place in. Particularly, I'm thinking of games like Tales of Symphonia, or Animal Crossing, or Luigi's Mansion. And since those are all GameCube games, you can probably tell where the love for gaming started with me on the GameCube. But actually, the GameCube wasn't the first console that I owned or played. In fact, I had played games on the Super NES, on the NES, on the Nintendo 64, and up until that point, I had played quite a few games. But there was something about those three games that really spoke to me, that made me enjoy them an extra amount, and made them very memorable for me. I firmly believe that that thing that sets them apart is immersion. All these games are pretty different. One is an RPG, one is sort of like a weird vacuum horror game, and the other is role-playing as a random villager under a mountain of death. Even though these games may not be focused on being graphically intense or having the most impressive game mechanics, what they did focus on is building a world, a story, and characters that are interesting or worth caring about. But now I'd like to pivot and discuss this whole escapism thing. I hear a lot of gamers discuss escapism as the main reason as to why they play video games. They play video games because they want to escape reality, because they want to shut away all the responsibilities of their day-to-day life and just play a video game for a little bit. Now, inherently, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. And I don't want to come across as if I'm saying sitting down and just mindlessly playing a game for a little bit is a bad thing. But today what I wanted to talk about is how it's actually really bizarre that this is like the end goal for most gamers. Let's imagine for a second that instead of talking about video games, we were talking about, let's say, books, particularly fantasy novels, because I love me some fantasy novels. I didn't read fantasy novels to simply pass time or to just shut out the real world. For me to enjoy a book, it has to have a pretty good story, compelling characters. I have to care about it. If I read an entire book and all it did was pass the time, I would probably not recommend that to anybody. It would really just feel like a waste of time. And you can apply this to other forms of media as well. If you were to go watch a movie and that movie were to simply pass the time, it's probably not a very good movie, is it? I mean, sure, it can get you to forget about the real world for an hour or two, but if it's not very compelling, you probably feel like you wasted your money on that movie ticket. So then we can shift our focus back to gaming. And hopefully at this point, it's starting to become more obvious as to why I think it's kind of bizarre that most gamers seek only escapism. Escapism is achieved in video games by mechanical means, with like a gameplay loop. A gameplay loop is just the series of tasks that you perform in the game as, you know, how you play the game. And so any game that has created a gameplay loop that people can play is capable of getting you that escapism that you so desire. But that's commonplace nowadays. There are a lot of games that are simply kind of a waste of time. Sure, they can pass the time, but I think simply passing the time is sort of wasting your time. Humans are meaning-making machines. We want to feel, we want to create, we want to be absorbed into fantastic and wonderful worlds not of our own. So how did this problem come to exist in gaming? I think it's kind of a complicated conversation, but the long and short of it is that consumers expect escapism. They expect a mechanically good game. but they don't expect a game that will touch their heart, They don't expect a game to make them feel things. And from the developer's side of things, this is actually somewhat beneficial. And now, quote, notice the bunny ears here, because it seems like it's beneficial. If all your consumer expects is a mechanically good game, then you can 100% for sure pull that off if you have enough skill and time. And in the realm of business, this is a good thing because this allows you to make predictions. But if consumers expected more than just a mechanically good game, if they expected for a story that will touch their hearts, make them feel things, then you're getting into the realm of art. You're getting into the realm of storytelling. Even if you intend to have a good story, that might not work out well. Art is a risky thing. There really isn't a 100% guarantee that the emotions and the ideas that you seek to convey with your piece of art, with your game, are going to be properly conveyed. Now let's discuss why developers think it's beneficial to focus only on game mechanics and ignore sort of the more artistic aspects of games. Developers think that if all their consumers care about are the game mechanics, the graphics, stuff like that, all they have to do is put out a really graphically and mechanically good game, people will love it. The last part is actually the miscalculation, because people will only like a game if it has good graphics and is mechanically well done. People will only love a game if it does something special, if it has a little bit of something, if it gets in your feels, if it gives you a story that you can remember, or if it just makes you feel a part of the world that you're in. Now, I just wanted to repeat, as I said before, I'm not saying that shutting your brain off and grinding on a video game is like inherently bad or not a part of gaming. I totally understand the need to decompress because life is stressful. And sometimes you really do just want to shut your brain off and just play little video games. I think that is an aspect of video games, but I don't think that that is the entirety of video games. And unfortunately, over time, I think people have come to expect games to be mechanically well done and to be graphically good or whatever, but I don't think people have expected developers to create compelling stories and really immerse us in the worlds that we play in. Now, there are exceptions, of course, like the games I mentioned earlier, the games that I played when I was younger, or like even just Genshin Impact. Speaking of Genshin Impact, let's use something from Genshin as an example in this situation, like the music. You see, for years and years and years, I have been absolutely bored to tears by video game music. It seems like every video game developer just puts in a soundtrack for the sake of putting in a soundtrack. They mathematically conclude how to write a symphony, and then they pay someone to simply write the symphony. No love goes into the process. What Hoyoverse did with Genshin Impact's music was truly special. They took a risk. They hired someone with a vision, and they made the artistic aspects of music a central theme in their game. Like, if you played a lot of music from games that I've played over the years, I probably wouldn't even be able to tell you what games they are from. But if you played any Genshin music whatsoever, I would immediately recognize it, and I'd be jamming to it too. Not to mention, there's a lot of music in Genshin that brings up memories from specific parts of the story that, really actually bring up feelings for me. And this was a risk for them. They weren't sure if people would really like their approach to music in the game. But to be totally honest, I think they succeeded the second they decided to take an artistic route rather than just putting music in the game for the sake of putting music in the game. Honestly, for me, it's kind of sad that it's uncommon nowadays to play a game and feel like, wow, this was a passion project for the developers. A lot of love went into this. Instead, it often just feels like a lot of money and time went into it, but not really a lot of love. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole conversation. Those are all of my thoughts. I just wanted to talk about how I think there's an imbalance in gaming, that people value escapism for some reason so much when the real juicy good parts of gaming are the immersive bits, the parts that bring you into the worlds that you are playing. I think as consumers, we should encourage developers to put more passion into their games rather than just more money. But now I want to turn the conversation around to you. I'm curious what you think. Do you think it's okay for developers to focus on just game mechanics and hardware and stuff? Or do you think that developers should try to take more artistic risks with their projects? I'm also curious about your experience with video games and whether you feel like you want to have a game that you care about rather than just a game that you play. And lastly, I just wanted to say, if you like the video, drop a like, sub. We've got a Discord, link in the description. Lots of friendly people in there like me. And yeah, looking forward to more interesting conversations in the future. And as always, stay healthy, stay hydrated. Peace.